Hey everybody, welcome back. So in this module, we're going to continue with our discussion of RShiny, and we're going to be building another Shiny app. But we're going to be digging into this concept of reactivity a little bit more. Okay, reactivity is basically the idea that the app dynamically updates based on user input. It's the interaction between the user interface and the server function. Every Shiny app has an element of reactivity. So in the last app that we built, that occurred in the context of the render plot function. But we might also want to add additional elements of reactivity by using functions like the reactive function. And that's what we're going to be doing in this lesson. We're going to be using the reactive function to add two reactive elements to our plot. Okay, so let me go ahead and just show you what we're going to be doing here. So this is the app that we're going to be building. We're going to take data from the St. Louis Federal Reserve database, which includes data. It's an API that includes data on just about any economic indicator you can think of for the US and also for other countries as well. So I encourage you to check that out. But we're going to be using it to build this simple app where the user can select an indicator related to the health of the economy. So here we have the indicators that they can select. So that's one element of reactivity, and then those are going to be graphed. And then in a line chart. And then the other element of reactivity is the date. So they can select, the user can select what date range they want to look at and explore more closely a specific date range. Okay. All right. The other thing I want to point out about this is you see these little rectangles here, these gray rectangles. That's recession shading. So each of those rectangles indicates a period of economic recession. So this is a very common feature of graphs that you might see in the Wall Street Journal or Yahoo Finance, where they have a trend in an economic indicator and then this recession shading along with that in the background. All right. So for the recession shading, you're going to be accessing way down at the bottom of the lesson this helper script here. All right. And I'm not going to go into details about what all's in there, but basically you just need to make an R script out of this code and store it in your Shiny app project so that the app can access it as a helper script, as we explained, in previous lessons. Well, we've explained in previous lessons what a helper script is, and this is going to build your recession shading. All right. Okay. So before you get started in this lesson, you'll also want to go and get yourself a Fred API key. You want to install FredR, which is how we're going to be accessing the Fred database through R. And you also want to install ECM, which is going to be used in the helper function for the recession shading, and Shiny widgets. Okay. All right, so once you've got all of that installed, you should be ready to go and start building this app. So what we're going to do in the rest of this video is just build out the setup portion of the code, and then in the next video we'll work on the UI, and then in the video after that we'll work on the server function, and then we'll launch the app locally. All right. So let's go ahead and start a new project. Go to File, go to New Project, click New Directory, click Shiny Application, hit Browse, and determine some place that you want to save this project. I'm going to put it in this Data Viz _2102 folder here that I have on my desktop, and then just name the project whatever you want, or the directory whatever you want to call it. I'll call this Fred_app, and hit Create Project. Okay, and then we have our app.r file and some starter code, exhibition code. We went over that the last time. We're not going to be using that. One thing I'd suggest you get out of the way right away is just go ahead and start a new R script, all right, and save it as, we'll do save as, and call this helper.r. Okay, then go back to the course website, scroll down to the bottom, and copy this code here from the course website and paste it here into helper.r. Okay, and this is going to be the helper script for the recession shading, and you should see that appear now here in your Fred_app or whatever you've called this folder, this project folder. All right, and it says ECM's not installed, so I must have updated R recently and not installed this, so go ahead and update it, go ahead and install it. And then while that's going on, we'll go back to our app.r. Okay, and let's go ahead and get started with our code, and we'll just go ahead and delete all this out, and we will start by loading our packages, and we're going to load Shiny first of all, and we're going to load FredR for the API. We're going to load dplyr, and we are going to load ggplot2. All right. And then what you need to do next is to set your Fred API key. All right, and the way you're going to do it is you're going to do FredR set_key, and then you're going to put in here your API key. Okay, your Fred API key. All right. I'm not going to do it that way because I'm doing a video here and I don't want everybody to know my API key. So I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste some special code in here. What I've done here, basically I have saved my API key as an environmental variable. So that way I can make my code public in a repo or in a video without worrying about somebody using my API key, which would not be great. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm basically retrieving through sys.get env and then Fred API key. I'm retrieving my API key and storing it in this object, and then I'm using FredR set key to set my API key, right, which is now stored in that object. All right, so that is that, and next we're going to assign Fred series to objects, meaning that we're going to assign the codes for the variables that we want to retrieve from the Fred database. We're going to store those in objects. Okay, so we're going to have a consumer confidence index, a business confidence index, a composite lead indicator. All three of those are OECD data that are published by Fred, and so we need to note that in the app. So we're going to have some help text in the app that's going to note this as a source. And then the unemployment rate and the growth rate, which are public data, published by the U.S. government. Okay, so we'll start with the Consumer Confidence Index, so CCI, and I'm going to type the code for that. So actually, let me just cut and paste this to make it quick. All right, so this is the code for CCI. All right, and then BCI is the Business Confidence Index, and the Fred code for that is this. These are not straightforward, but we do need to do this. And then our composite lead indicator is this here. And then unemployment rate is easy. Unemployment underscore rate or unimp underscore rate is just unrate. Right? And then growth is this one here. All right. The rate of economic growth, rate of growth in GDP. All right, so next we want to save a start date and an end date that we can use later on when we want to specify the start and end date for the retrieval of the different indicators. So we're going to tell Fred, you know, the period that we want to pull these data from, and we're also going to use these for that slider at the bottom of the plot that users are going to manipulate to select a date. We need a start date and end date for that. So set start and end date. All right, start date. And we're going to use the base R as date function here. It's the simplest way to do it. We could use lubridate2, the lubridate package, which is part of the tidyverse, but I don't think we need that here necessarily. It might be overkill. So end date as dot date. Sorry, this is. Let me go back and fix that in a second. And here we're just going to use the system date, right? The data on our machine, sys.date, with these parentheses, right? The sys.date function. All right, and we're using the as.date function because we want to store these as dates. All right, in case that's not obvious. All right, now we're going to create a list of named values for the input selection, just like we did for the last app. We need to have you know, set of values to populate that drop-down menu, and we need that, you know, the items in the drop-down menu to refer to the objects that we just saved. All right, so that when a user clicks on that item, it retrieves this data, right? Okay, so here we're going to create a list called vars. This should look familiar to you by now. And the first one's going to be consumer confidence, and that equals CCI. All right, and then second one is business confidence, equals BCI. And then the next one is composite indicate. Oops. Let me do this. And then also, it doesn't like that I don't have a closing parentheses there, so let me do that. Hopefully, yeah, that should resolve that, but let's keep going here. So composite indicator equals CLI, all right, and comma. The next one is unemployment rate equals unamp_rate, comma. And then finally growth rate equals growth. All right, and we can do it like that. All right, so now we have a nice list. Okay, so that's done, and then the last thing we're going to do for the setup code is just to load our helper script. All right, and here we'll say load helper script, and this is going to be again for that recession shading that we want to include in the chart. Helper.r. All right, and we've already created that file at the very beginning of this video. So that will load that script so that we can access that function to create the recession shading later on. All right, so that's it for the setup. And in the next lesson, we're going to work on the code for the user interface. I'll see you there.